Okay, Marcus, thank you for taking the time to come on to the podcast today.
Anytime, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, tell us, for people who haven't heard our chat before in the background, or this is their first time coming across you, just give us a bit of a brief intro into who you are.
Essentially, I've been a professional within the fitness industry for 15 years on my own kind of pursuit of fitness and all that kind of stuff for like 20 years at this stage. And the first 10 to 15 years of that journey, I went down this huge rabbit hole of obsession surrounding diet and training and everything in the pursuit of particular goals without realizing that I'd, backed myself into a corner and essentially developed multiple eating disorders, body image issues. And to me, it always just seemed normal. I took for granted while it was happening that, this is just what it is to be in great shape, or this is just what it is to be health conscious. But no, I wasn't being health conscious. I was struggling with, for the most part, bulimia and binge eating disorder. And then at the very start of the journey, something that I don't talk about very much, there was actually a period of time where I met all the diagnostic criteria for atypical anorexia. So, it was a dark time. Like, I missed a lot of experiences and missed a lot of life. I was achieving a lot in my professional life in terms of, balancing a career in the health and fitness industry with a career as an entertainer. And that was all good, but I was just so focused on diet, on body image, on looking a certain way in front of cameras, in front of people. And it meant that I never actually experienced what was happening right in front of me. And it took me, well over a decade to break that cycle. And now I work with people to help them break out of patterns of like destructive relationships with food, find some semblance of balance and happiness when it comes to their relationship with food, and how to actually even pursue certain goals in terms of health and fitness without bringing up the echoes of anxiety and obsession surrounding food and dieting.
Yeah, powerful, mate. And a lot of that definitely resonates with me because,
Mm,
as we've chatted before, like similar backstories in terms of this change becoming incredibly obsessive, one to make, really driven by aesthetics and trying to fit in, and looking back, realizing the symptomatology being akin to something actually quite serious.
yeah.
Like when I was reading up on bulimia and how bulimia is not just a purging disorder, but could also be one that you exercise excessively
Yeah.
through fear of weight gain. And I was like, oh right, that's ringing a kind of bell for me there. That I'm afraid to miss a session in case I get fat. Like I'm afraid to not train in case I put on weight. Like I need to make sure I'm hitting my 8 sessions a week. I need to make sure I'm hitting my X thousand steps a day and sort of tracking all of my calories. And it was all driven through this desire to be happy with my physique.
Mm,
And it does make you, when you tell about your story about that sort of body dysmorphia and that atypical anorexia, like you've got to ask yourself, well, it is is trying to make a physique change the problem? Is that the problem, or is it the way that you go about it? What is it, a chicken and egg
yeah.
scenario?
Yeah. That's a really amazing question, because I've come to believe that it's two things. It's the way we go about it. It's also the overvaluation of weight and shape that we're exposed to as a society. So we place certain people who look a certain way on these massive pedestals. And that's an issue. you know but there is a balance to be had there. We can high five someone for being in good shape. Great, that's totally fine. But it's like, should we really just glorify someone and put them on this huge pedestal just because their body looks a certain way, often done using methods that don't take their long-term health into consideration, like performance-enhancing drugs come to mind right now. So this is where, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being in good shape, and we can congratulate people on doing that and say, yeah, good for you. But at the same time, the overvaluation of that and the implication for other people of like, if you don't look this specific way, then you're worth less as a person. That's really problematic, massively problematic. And then the other side of it is the ways that are currently being put out there and heavily marketed in terms of how to make these changes, how to look like the person that society values more. That is also problematic. So the methods that are being pushed definitely create issues.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it, when you bring up the performance enhancing drugs aspect and the PEDS aspect, because it's a case of, you don't want to sound bitter to be like, well, that person's clearly not natural, and someone else be like, no, come on, it's hard work. Or you carefully explain to someone, well, there is a genetic predisposition to how much body fat someone might feel more comfortable with, and particularly their ab tissue, how defined it is, how thick it is, how pronounced it is. And people are like, no, like, I've got abs because I work hard. I'm like, I'm not I'm not saying that you don't exercise a lot and eat a certain way, but I'm also saying this, and it's a really careful, like the Liver King, for example. Like, are we surprised that this man was on a huge list of performance enhancing drugs? I'm personally not, but there might have been many people who were captured with that illusion of primal based eating. I mean, he was clearly a parody, but primal based eating, living this certain way, like being a real man, and like having these rock hard pecs and bulging biceps, and being like, yeah, because I eat pig hearts on a daily basis, and push cars through sand, and that's what you need to do to look like me. But actually, no, it's actually, I need to take Anavar and inject it directly into my ass.
Yeah. And yeah, the performance enhancing drugs conversation is one that I'm particularly involved in, because I used performance enhancing drugs for approximately a year. I was, again, balancing this career in the entertainment industry with a career as a health and fitness professional. So naturally, just straight out of the gate, the hours that I was working weren't congruent with making progress in terms of looking great and being really lean. I was working night-based stuff in rehearsals and as an entertainer and everything like that, and then I'd be up early in the morning to work the health and fitness industry stuff. And I was just not getting the sleep and recovery necessary to build the kind of physique that I was hell-bent on building. So a doctor at the time offered this as an option to me. They offered performance enhancing drugs, essentially a combination of testosterone replacement therapy, so TRT, and peptides to me, legally, of course, and at a dose that would be considered, quote, natural, even by some athletes, by some professionals, because by some people's standards, anabolic steroids, sure, that means you're on something, but if you're just on a little TRT, that's fine. But it makes a fucking difference. It's like, for me, I felt like it was being a superhuman version of myself, that I only needed to sleep 6 hours a night. I could get up at 5 a.m. and I was training with competitive Thai boxers at the time. Like, I was keeping pace with guys who were triathletes, who were using Thai boxing as a way to stay in fit during the off season. I was gaining muscle at the same time without putting really all that much thought into my weight training program. I was training like a fighter, not like a bodybuilder, and I was still gaining muscle. I wasn't really watching my diet that closely. Always had abs. And when I decided to, leave performance enhancing drugs out and just be completely natural, that was like one of the roughest years of my life, coming off performance enhancing drugs in terms of body image. And like I all of a sudden had to sleep more like a regular person. I all of a sudden, like, there was no amount of work that I could do, or no amount of restriction that I could bring to my diet that stopped me from losing a bit of muscle, gaining fat, and I just couldn't maintain the same standard. And it didn't mean that I was completely out of shape, but at the same time, like, performance enhancing drugs, even the small dose that I was on, definitely gave me an edge. And it would be so easy, and it is so easy for so many professionals to jump on a small dose and stay on that small dose and forget that their clients do actually need more than 6 hours sleep a night, and forget that for people who aren't using this kind of thing, it's a very different experience of health and fitness, especially the body image side of things.
Yeah, I mean, elaborate on that for us more, that year transition, because you've said like it was probably the most difficult year of my life, and I can absolutely understand why. Like,
it sucked.
You were sleeping less but feeling great. You were burning the candle at both ends effectively, but not feeling the burnout.
Yeah.
You weren't training particularly like cleverly yet.
No.
Getting great results. And there's obviously newbie gains to certain things as well, where like we'll see greater results at the beginning of anything. But to then, what made you stop? Because surely the temptation was to never stop. Like, this has been prescribed to me. This is clearly just what I need to be at a normal base level, because I don't have the mechanism. Like, otherwise it wouldn't have been prescribed. Like, I'm just going to stay like this forever.
Well, the loophole that was used to prescribe that to me was that my testosterone levels were like literally in the middle of normal. Like, I was 27 years old. Testosterone levels were at the middle. They were just fine. And this doctor was like, well, what we can do is take them to the upper edge of what is considered normal.
Right.
And the peptides that I was given, that was under the guise of anti-aging medicine. Because the anti-aging industry is essentially, in a lot of ways, performance enhancing drugs. The same drugs that are given to people in terms of anti-aging are often the same ones that are prescribed in terms of, performance enhancers. So I went to what was considered to be an anti-aging clinic, but I was 27 years old, for fuck's sake. Like, there was nothing that I needed in terms of anti-aging. But then coming off those, it was like no amount of work that I could do could help me keep pace with what I was accustomed to at that stage. And like you said, I wasn't putting a whole lot of thought into my training while using PEDs, and I was still getting fantastic results. I was training just like a savage. I was training Thai boxing. I was doing 1 billion press-ups a week, and just pull-ups and a few really shitty deadlifts. and here we go. Like, my boxing trainer used to call me disco muscles, because I would rock up, and I was the only guy in this group of like fighters, in this group of Thai boxers, who was built like they belonged on the cover of Men's Health magazine. Right. And it wasn't because my training was special or my diet was special. I was doing the same training as everybody else, but maybe just a few more exercises here and there in terms of beach muscles.
Right.
And yet abs, biceps, shoulders, all this kind of stuff. And again, not bodybuilder level, because I wasn't doing bodybuilder training, but the difference was just tangible. And then the experience coming off that, I was accustomed to looking a certain way, feeling a certain way. And I've heard this described in terms of once you've been really lean, fitness competitors talk about this a lot, as I'm sure you know, and your experience as well, being really lean. Like I've seen photos of you shredded. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this too, because like once you've been really lean, everything other than that feels fat.
Yeah.
And it fucks with you.
Yeah.
Bad. Like there's so much, I don't know about you, but like there is still I need to be on it in terms of my own mindset still, because of the years that I spent being absolutely diced and like shredded like all the time at the expense of my mental health, social life, everything like that. And now it's like I still catch myself, and I need to be mentally on it in terms of good mindset. What's your experience been of that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I were to give you a snapshot of the last 5 years of my life, then you would see, maybe not even 5, maybe 7 years of my life, you would see quite dramatic weight cycling in terms of body fat composition. And that varied between different plans and things that I was doing. The more dramatic experience, I'm not even going far enough back, 10 years, because it was 2012, 2013 when I was on like a bodybuilder style meal plan.
Yeah.
And that was when I got quite lean. And I remember going to a CrossFit competition in the summer and having visible ab tissue. And a lot of my friends from back home were competing and training, and they were like, what the hell's going on? Like, you've never had abs. I went to a stag do with them all in Edinburgh that summer, and we went dressed as wrestlers, and I was there as John Cena. So it was literally just like jean shorts and like a denim jacket. Like, but I felt confident to not have a shirt on because I had abs, and they were all just like, what is going on? Like, you've never had abs. Like, these are my school child friends. You're like, you've always been a chunky monkey. Like, you've always been the fat guy, because that's what they did call me. Like, this is why I had body dysmorphia, in that when I was growing up, even though I was just a stocky rugby player, I was a prop, and I was called a big guy. I was called a fat guy. I was called chubby. It was a low blow that was easy if you were in a childhood argument or fight,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of message that I carried with me. And so let's go towards sort of more 2015 to 2017. I had ups and downs in my composition when I moved from London to Leeds, because when I first got shredded, it was working with a coach who was giving me macros and doing all that jazz. And then when I moved and left the services of that coach and stopped tracking as much, I put a little bit of body fat back on again. And I was like, I need to get leaner again. And so I took it into my own hands to track and kind of do things myself, particularly as I was doing more and more certifications in nutrition myself. I was like, right, let's do this for myself. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. And then as I put body fat going, after going to Australia in 2018, traveling for a bit, I was like, oh, well, I'll try. Rather than tracking, I'll try doing fasting. I'll do fasting. And I'd fast and, eat a protein shake and some fruit or something around midday. And then I'd have like a proper meal at around, evening time. And if I was still hungry, I'd have some low calorie ice cream at night and a beer in Australia.
Yeah.
And I got lean again. And I was like, yeah, well, that works. And, man, it was just it was up and down cycle quite extensively. And every time to get leaner, it was because I was doing a combination of training a lot, which I enjoyed doing. And there was more of a performance aspect there competitively, but I was also doing things with food that I was either tracking religiously or, doing protein sparing modified fasts effectively was the terminology for it. Mini cutting.
Yeah.
He was always like, let's just mini cut for a few weeks. Let's just eat low calorie for a while. Like, let's just eat protein and vegetables for a while, cut a bit of body fat down. I'll get there. And then, inevitably it starts to bounce back up again. And yeah, you're right. It fucks with you mentally.
Yeah, a lot. Very much.
Because you're like, man, you just think to yourself, I want to look like that again.
Yeah.
But then you remember when you looked like that, you were trying to get to somewhere else.
Oh, dude.
You were trying to get leaner.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you were more preoccupied with your body than ever.
Yeah.
I was like tensing in all the photos that I was in. Do I have abs? Don't have abs in that one. Like I've not, I'm not where I need to be yet. Because I don't, like, I'd look at a photo of me in a CrossFit competition skipping and be like, I don't have abs in that photo, therefore I'm not lean enough yet.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because just the other day I was trying to create a piece of content that kind of talked about this and the role that performance enhancing drugs played. And I was like, I need a photo of myself from that period of time to tell this story. And I couldn't find one. Like, I couldn't find a good one, because at the time I still didn't want to have photos taken of myself, because I still wasn't where I wanted to be. The yardstick kept just shifting. So this is where, people talk about mindset, or we talk about mindset, and it's hard to imagine getting to a place where, you're lean and you have visible abs. And so many people think like, it's very easy to think, and I understand this train of thought and this thought process. It's easy to think, I'll be happy when I look like that. I will feel good about that. If I just looked like that, yes, that's it. I will be happy. I will be satisfied with that. That body will bring me a lot of satisfaction, a lot of happiness. But it's not true. It won't, because the mindset of getting there often means that once you're there, you end up just looking at the next phase and going, oh, if I could just make it a bit better. And it's a never-ending cycle. It's an absolute disaster. And it's this overvaluation of specific details about physical appearance, rather than looking at just, let's be healthy, let's take what steps we can without compromising mental health and see what that brings. But that's very hard to market. It's not an attention grabbing attitude. You can't put that on a poster with a transformation photo, so people's attention is drawn elsewhere.
No, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Of like marketing and the ideal physique is what we're shown as like the ultimate goal, right? You said I was the only guy in that gym that looked like a Men's Health cover model. I remember reading Men's Health when I was a teenager and growing up, and thinking that I was fueling this health endeavor of mine. And I remember the cover model challenges. Can you be our next cover model? Like, we're gonna take these guys through this grueling transformation and see if they can be cover model in shape in X amount of time. And you see when you read about body image, which was never chatted about when I was younger, when you read about it and you learn about how actors have changed throughout the years, and you see it, look at like 70s and 80s Bond movies to the Daniel Craig generation. I mean, even just look at the Pierce Brosnan to the Daniel Craig generation and look at the difference there in terms of muscularity. I'm not saying Pierce Brosnan's not in good shape, because obviously he is.
Yeah.
And you hear about action men and their physiques changing to be, narrower waists, more ab tissue, bigger shoulders and biceps. And it's like, I don't think guys give themselves enough compassion to the pressures that they feel as well. And I think that there's, because as guys, we have it easy in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of pressure for us in that regard that I don't think is spoken about enough.
Hell yeah.
And you're right in that if Men's Health put a bloke like me on the front, I'm in good shape. I've got a bit of body fat. Like, I don't have visible abs anymore. But if I was there and I was like, posing and saying, exercise for your health and for your mental well-being, and so that you can have energy for years to come, and don't do PEDs in case your knob falls off. Not many people are going to buy that magazine, apart from maybe the last section. To be like, does that happen? Does that actually happen?
Does that actually happen? Oh my god! Well, it didn't happen to me, luckily.
No,
but like, what?
Yeah. Thanks
what
for clarifying that, because that is what everybody. That is what everybody then wondered. Like, oh my god, are we going to get a big reveal here?
No. There's. Yeah, I mean, it's really cold where I am right now, so there's not much to reveal. But like,
Acorn.
But what you just said reminded me of the whole kind of shenanigans around Ant Middleton's Men's Health cover, and like Ant Middleton, right?
SAS guy.
Yeah, ex Special Forces, climbed Everest, all this kind of shit. And he does have visible abs. He's just not absolutely shredded on this magazine cover. And fucking ex Special Forces climbed Everest in great shape. Him on the cover of Men's Health. There was this huge uproar from all these people that were like, he's not even shredded. Like he's not in that great shape. Like, and it was like, are you fucking joking? Like, are you fucking kidding? By anyone's standards, who wasn't like a hardcore physique athlete, he was in good shape. But because we've been so conditioned to use the yardstick of essentially body models and fitness models, anything shy of that has started to feel or come across like not quite enough. And it's fucking disgusting. Like it's doing absolute horrendous things to mental health. Like I've got no words for it, but yeah, the fact that someone can be on the cover of Men's Health who's achieved such incredible things. Like, I don't know that much about Ant Middleton. I haven't read his books or anything like that, but just purely based on the fact he's ex-Special Forces, he climbed Everest. Those two facts alone will make me go, all right, man, good job.
Yeah.
Someone like that can be on the cover of Men's Health, and people can be like, oh, but he's not shredded enough. Fuck off. Like, fuck off. Yeah.
Yeah, we're crossing the line now between what is a health, what is a healthy person by definition, and what then is just ridiculously lean for the sake of being lean. And those things they're not correlatory. Happiness and leanness isn't correlatory. And
100%.
And full health isn't either. And you can see how much we've been biased to think a certain way, because both you and I have used the phrase "in great shape" to chat about people who are of a certain build and certain muscularity or certain shape, forgetting that that's our bias now because of what we've seen.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna totally own up to that. Like, that's because of what we've read, what we've seen, what we've been conditioned to. It's what we're conditioned to from society. Both you and I are active weight training blokes and eat a certain way that and also have certain genetic predispositions to be this way. Like, I've always been stocky, I've always been built. Have always been fairly lean as per what I can remember of seeing of you. And health isn't a size, right? Like, health is something that you do. You exercise in a way that you enjoy, and you eat a variety of nutrient giving foods, fiber and all that, and then that's what makes you healthy, not the shape per se. But that's what leads us really well into why we're chatting, is that it feels like there's this crossover between, is it okay to even want to change our body? Or is that always the wrong goal? Like, should the goal be, well, I want to start weight training because I want to get stronger and I want to feel confident about myself. And I've been told that weight training helps that, because it does. Just the act of weight training can improve your body image.
And
I want to eat more fruits and veggies in a manner that's accessible to me
Mm-hmm.
because I want to live long and prosper.
Yeah.
But is it the wrong goal to say I want to exercise because I want to change my shape? Like where does that? I'm genuinely wondering where the line is.
Me too.
Like where's the line of saying, well, I want to promote a good body image, but I also want to exercise and change my physique because that will make me feel a bit more comfortable and confident within myself. Like when is that actually the right line?
Yeah. And this is why I appreciate our friendship and our professional relationship and the conversations that we have around this, because you're the only person who I have these in-depth conversations with. And I think, like we're doing right now, sharing this conversation, it's just so important. And something that just came to mind as you were saying that is like one of the nuances is I feel from my own experiences and what I've learned from my own journey and working with clients, and just the fact that sometimes we can't control what we're drawn to. If we try and control what we feel or berate ourselves for feeling a certain way or think, I can't feel that because that's wrong, I need to feel this way. If we get caught up in trying to control what we feel, that can be a really, really slippery slope, and really dicey territory. So the way that I do my best to describe it now, it's like, it's okay to want certain things, but we need to keep in mind what is constructive as far as the mindset that we bring on board while working towards certain things and the goal, right? So the fact that someone might want to change their physical appearance, like, there is a part of me that still wants to, full disclosure, there is a part of me that is somewhat tempted by the idea of performance enhancing drugs, getting absolutely diced and putting on muscle and all that kind of stuff. And I still work to improve or to change the way that my body looks. It's just that the steps I take these days don't cross the line of fucking over my mental health and happiness and this whole spectrum of things that are genuinely so much more important than the specifics of how I look. Like, for example, my wife gets a lot of joy from, she bakes us like desserts and that kind of stuff. And I love that she does that for us. Like, it touches me, like, in my heart. I'm like, the fact that my wife would make dessert for us and bake for us, and then every night would give me a bowl of something that she's made lovingly for us. I would never push that aside or say no to that or give that up in the name of my body fat percentage being a couple of percentages lower. Because what's more important? Like, what's gonna make me happier? The relationship that I have with my wife, or being a few body fat percentages lower? Like, this is the kind of nuance that I feel is left out of these kind of things. And like, I feel that we can make sensible attempts with sensible strategies to honor the things, or to honor steps towards what we might feel drawn towards or what we might feel curious about exploring. But we need to be really aware of when those efforts cross the line where they start having a negative effect on our overall experience of life. So we need to recognize when an attempt at changing our body or changing our appearance is detracting from our overall happiness, our overall fulfillment. And that's where the line is drawn. And what's difficult about that is that line is going to be in a different place for everybody. And also, so many people are so down the rabbit hole of obsession and overvaluation of body image that line isn't actually where they think it is. the line has been blurred for them because of that hyper focus, that overvaluation of weight and shape. Because when body image is the only thing in your life, when you've got blinders on, then you're not going to have an accurate sense of when those efforts are actually having a negative effect on your mental health. And these are the things that can't be outlined in a generalized program. These are the things that can't be summarized in an Instagram post or on a transformation poster. These are more in-depth conversations that come from one-to-one interaction and reflection and self-discovery and self-awareness. And that's what makes this subject challenging to get out there on like a mass scale. That's what I feel about it anyway.
Yeah. No, I would agree, particularly about the having desserts with your loved ones and saying, are you really going to miss out on that opportunity to connect? Because both you and I have been in places where we have done.
Yeah, and I regret it.
Yeah, because it's like, what do you remember more, right? Do you remember being a few percentages lower body fat and looking leaner in a picture, or do you remember having a great time with the people that you were with? And it's going to come down to your priorities and your what you really want at that time, your values as a person and what's more important to you. Some people will want to chase that physique change by any means necessary for a time and think, well, I want to do it while I'm younger, or while I've got the time, or while I've got this energy, or like let's say they get made redundant, they've got 6 months where they haven't got to work because they've got gardening leave or like a payout, and they're like, right, I'm just going to focus on doing this for 6 months and challenge myself and see what can happen. But then they're okay with the change back to real life. Well, then you do you. As you said, you've got to consider your mental health and your relationships and the fallout of everything, rather than just putting this ultimate physique change on a pedestal and saying, right, I'll go for that by any means necessary, because then I'll be able to maintain it once the hard work is done, and then I can go back to like living a normal life, quote unquote. Because actually that will be a battle that will be very difficult to do. Like, there are people that genetically sit at lower body fat percentages. There are people that genetically have more pronounced ab tissue. There are people that will have lifestyles that are more conducive to looking a certain way, particularly if they're gym-based personal trainers, because they have a ridiculously high step count. They have the chance to exercise within any break that they have, and their lifestyle will be, apart from you, if you're doing a side hustle of an evening, band session, you'll have a lifestyle that's revolved around the gym, and that's not realistic for your average person who works in an office and has a couple of kids and a commute to and from work.
I think something that you said there in particular is, hit me really hard and is just so important, that mentality of I'm just going to go really hard for 6 months, see what result comes out of it, and then I'm going to be okay going back to regular life. Like, sure, there might be a couple of people out there who've actually done that and have actually been okay going back to regular life, but I've never met one. I've never met a person who achieved something in terms of their physical appearance through manipulating diet and exercise and whatever, and achieved a big change, and then was genuinely like, okay, I'm happy going back to what's sustainable. Like, show me someone who has experienced that. I'm not one of them. Like, it's taken a long time. Like, it takes daily mindset once you've been there, once you've made that change. Like, I mean, yes, I'm happy doing what I'm currently doing. But yeah, it takes effort. once you've been there. It almost takes training and a whole lot of awareness.
Mm.
And for the average person who isn't a professional within the industry, who isn't having these conversations all the time, to think, oh yeah, I'm just going to see what I can do, and then I'm going to be happy going back to a more sustainable version of myself, I would think very carefully about that train of logic.
Mm. Yeah. Because you've got to ask yourself, you're not going to know until you get there. The fallout might be bigger than you think. As you said, you've not met one, and it's like, I'm happy now, but it definitely took a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I never have body image concerns, because I do, and I think that's part of having a positive, or at least a healthy body image, is understanding that you're going to have the good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And that you have the tools then to navigate those emotions, as opposed to letting them fuel another restrictive diet or excessive exercise regime.
Yes.
And you're able to logically balance your current values and priorities to say, well, I'm not going to go back to doing 2 sessions a day, because I value the time walking the dogs and spending time with my partner outside of the hours that I currently work, and I don't want to give those up for the sake of going in and doing 45-minute on a ski erg just so that I can, look a bit leaner or be a bit fitter, because that's not the priority right now. And that does take time, I think, to get there. I think what it comes down to is that combination of acceptance while also making a health-based change that you feel good about, right?
Yeah.
So it's that whole, right, I accept where I am in life. I am where I am because of a combination of the genetics that I have and the choices that I've made leading up to this point, and also what's available to me, in terms of food and access to exercise equipment and my job and all the rest of it, because there's a huge complex combination of factors that incur somebody's weight and shape, which a lot of people don't understand. So you've got all of these things, and you say, right, I accept where I am right now. However, I want to be more active because I want to look after my health, and I want to eat more fruits and vegetables and more fiber, because I want to, in a way that's accessible to me, because I'm aware that my variety of food is quite low right now and I'm not eating many of those things. So I'm going to make those changes, and I'm going to really embrace eating for hunger and for satisfaction, and working on my emotional regulation, which may or may not include food, depending on my inkling at the time. But also, I'm going to build up strategies that I'm not just boredom eating, stress eating, or mindlessly eating because of emotions.
Yeah.
And then no matter what happens, I'm making changes that I'm comfortable with, that suit me from a personal standpoint. And if there's a physique change that comes out of it, then fine. But it's almost as if that's not the sole purpose for the change.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to bring up, that the aesthetic change, the physique change, has to be a byproduct of whatever process actually makes you feel genuinely good. Because if we're engaging in practices that, aren't making us feel good in the name of an aesthetic change, then whatever change that is, there's only a certain period of time that's going to be maintained, because we're always going to be drifting back to a set of habits and practices that make us genuinely feel good. And it's probably important to point out that, when we say genuinely feel good, there's a huge difference between impulsively eating a whole bunch of random foods and genuinely feel good. I think that's a message that often gets left out in the, making peace with food conversation. It's like some people tend to take that message as like, I'm going to just eat whatever I fancy at any given moment, and that's what feeling good about food is. I would disagree. I would say that you know, there's a time and a place for that, but also think about how you felt 30 minutes after the last time you absent-mindedly overate. Like, it's not a good physical feeling.
No.
Like, it's like when we tune into the sensory experience of feeling good, rather than getting feeling good mixed up with just being distracted from feeling shit.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of people are using food to just distract themselves from how shit they might feel, or distract themselves from feeling tired. I used to use food as a coping mechanism. Majorly, I would use food to put distance between me and whatever I was feeling at any given moment. Because obviously the sensory experience of food is so strong, it's very easy to use that sensory experience of food to take your attention away from something more uncomfortable that you might be feeling. So just eating in the name of being distracted from something bad or an uncomfortable feeling is not the same thing as feeling genuinely good. So this is where, again, the nuance comes into this conversation in terms of food and what is actually going to be a sustainable feel-good practice. Because just impulsively grabbing different foods is not what unconditional permission is. You know, like, sustainable food habits with maybe a goal in mind don't always mean just eating impulsively or whatever you feel like at any given moment. There's more intention behind the food choices, but at the same time, acknowledging that you have some kind of goal or some kind of ambition and putting some intention behind food choices isn't the same thing as restricting your food choices. So again, this balance kind of comes into play, and this level of self-awareness that is not cultivated through these blanket approaches to diet that most of us are exposed to. It's like, okay, like, for example, if you're calorie counting, your one job is to hit this calorie target. Use the app, count the calories, do whatever you need to do. It's essentially encouraging people to ignore cues from their own sensory experience and just over intellectualize the process to the point where their own experience is being pushed to the side. We're not learning anything from that. We're not developing any self-awareness from that. Any process that relies on a formula at the expense of the development of self-awareness will fuck you every single time, because that sensory experience from the body is going to come back after it's been ignored or pushed aside for a certain period of time. And that's what the binge eating looks like. That's what the falling off the wagon looks like. So there's a lot of nuance in the conversation about food, and it's very easy on a surface level to think that something like making some intentional choices with food, oh, that's just, restriction. Well, it depends on the context, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think the mindset behind the intention makes it, personally.
Yeah.
And that's where I've, massively embraced a lot of intuitive eating literature in terms of making peace with food and having unconditional permission to eat and honoring your hunger and satisfaction and your emotions and moving your body and, applying gentle nutrition is their term effectively for, making dietary changes that are health based. And they do that in a certain order so that you don't make dietary changes for sake of dieting.
Yeah.
And when you've dieted for a long time and you've counted calories or you've fasted or you've restricted your food in a certain way by, doing an elimination diet or bypass a certain macronutrient diet, any change might feel restrictive.
Yes.
But as you rightly said, the mindset of the intention makes it. So the stories we tell ourselves about food and fitness are more important than food and fitness. If we tell ourselves that we're an all or nothing person, then we're going to be an all or nothing person. And this is where CBT is such a powerful element within coaching, because it's able to catch someone's cognitive thought and say, tell me more about why you think that. Like, what makes you think that? What evidence do you have for that? Like, there was genuinely someone who said to me that they can't eat cereal for breakfast because if they do, they'll crave more sugar all day and therefore overeat. I'm like, well, that is going to happen because you believe it's going to happen. And you're telling yourself it will happen. It's like, oh, I can't just eat one biscuit. I'll have the whole pack. No, you can. You're just not aware that you can yet. And there's a point of making peace with food that, as you said, unconditional permission to eat is not just saying, I'm going to have this entire pack of hobnobs because fuck diet culture.
Yes. Yeah.
It's saying, I'm aware that I can have the hobnobs if I really want them. But what's going on for me right now? What decision do I want to make that's going to match my values, my goals, and my satisfaction? And funny enough, this is, what we mentioned about off air between people who quote intuitive eating literature versus those who are actually trained in intuitive eating counseling. There's a worksheet within intuitive eating counseling that's called Practice Against Reactive Eating, which is the genuine 10-minute guideline that if I were to put on my social media, which is an upcoming post, potentially could get backlash from an anti-diet crowd of like, well, you're just asking people to restrict. It's like, I'm not though. I'm genuinely saying to them, give yourself 10 minutes, ask yourself, am I really hungry? Do I really want this food now? Is something going on? And if I do want this food, am I going to enjoy it more now or later?
Yes.
That's not restriction. That's sometimes saying yes and sometimes saying no. But if you feel it's restriction, if you believe it's restriction, then it's going to be received as restriction.
Yeah. I just want to leave space for that to just like...
Shut up.
No, like that. No, really, that if you feel like it's restriction, it's going to be received as restriction. Yeah. And like that statement, like I just want to, like, everyone just let that sink in for a second. Like, it's so important. Yeah. Because something came to mind when you mentioned gentle nutrition as well. And I know I'm jumping to a slightly different topic here, but in terms of reaching men with these kind of messages in particular, the marketing is all wrong. Like, there would be a lot of men out there who would benefit from understanding exactly really what gentle nutrition is, but no man is ever going to buy a fucking book called Gentle Nutrition. They're buying Carnivore, for fuck's sake. Like, and this is where like the message that we put out there, it's like that kind of extreme, like, we need to be part of this diet tribe or part of that diet tribe. Like, it's hard to put gentle nutrition on a poster and have people go, yeah, I'm passionate about that. And this is, I know it's something that we talk about. It's like how to actually get the message across, this nuanced, incredibly constructive message, in such a way that it is tangible and understandable in the form of an elevator pitch. And it's actually impossible to do. It takes long form content like what we're doing right now, and having these conversations to really explore it. But because the nature of, it's like what diets we choose or what information we take in, it's like walking down a hallway with labels on all the doors, and no matter what's behind the doors, we choose the door that we open based on the label that's on the door.
Yeah.
So this is one of the obstacles to actually having this kind of thing embraced by the people who really, you've got a dog situation going on there.
You can't see it, can you? Because of the green screen. Yeah, I was getting attacked there by 2 puppies. But carry on. You were making a good point.
Well, yeah, it's just no matter how constructive a nuanced message is, the nature of how we take in information surrounding diet right now, it's like whatever label is on the packet.
Yeah,
that's what's going to catch attention first.
Yeah, the marketing, like wrapping paper, effectively.
This is why the fucking Liver King had like literally millions of followers.
It still does, doesn't it? It's not like his whole brand's just crashed down upon him.
Yeah,
which is, another issue in and of itself. You've legitimately found out this guy's a complete sham, and yet you continue.
Some people are so desperate to maintain their faith in this guy, and it's like
it's like Michael Jackson. It's not as severe as what happened there, I guess, at all. But people were desperate to believe that wasn't true. Despite all of the stories and things that came out, when people are adamant to believe a certain thing, they will do.
Yeah. At the same time, like, not in terms of Michael Jackson, but in terms of Liver King, when I've put time into, I look through his posts, or I look at posts about him, and I look at the people who are still standing up for him. I've taken intentional time. I go to their pages. I get an understanding as much as I can of who they are and what they're about. And after I do that, I'm like, I completely understand, number one, why they felt drawn to this guy in the first place. And then secondly, why they're determined to stand by him. Like, it's, and it's difficult to argue with that. It's, even if someone's message from another professional standpoint sounds all backwards and fucked, when we get into what it is that draws people to influences, what it is that draws people to particular methods, what it is that draws people into particular rhetorics, then it's when we empathize with that, it's difficult to untangle it, because there's that feeling. I know for me, when I look at these people who are still following him and stand by him, I'm like, dude, if I was that person with that set of life experiences, maybe I'd be doing exactly the same thing. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's definitely removed some of the judgment. Like, I do my best not to judge people for following a method or following a person that I don't personally agree with, because, why we do the things we do, why we're attracted to the things that we're attracted to, comes down to very, very complex things in terms of our identity and our beliefs. And again, what we need to believe in order to maintain any given identity that we have at any particular time. And that's a big box. That's a lot to unpack. But I feel there will always be these less than ideal messages out there surrounding food, because there will always be a way to appeal to people on a level that, that might be something about that message, might be what they need on some level at that moment, and not in terms of food or health or anything. That they might need it for some other reason. They might be, I have no idea, but it's just been an interesting experience for me recently, like looking at the people who are still sticking by him, that Liver King guy, and standing up for him. And when I look at their stuff, when I go to their pages, when I try and get an understanding of who they are and what they're about, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I can see why they still follow him.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to understand that, I guess, as you said, you've got to dig deeper into what they're about. And as you said, I try not to bash approaches as much these days, but more whether people are just flat out lying.
Yeah, that's
in
the
terms
thing.
of what they say. Whether that, as you said, social media isn't the place really for nuance. Although if you were to put together a good carousel and a caption, you probably could land it. And to do a short form video, you could probably land it. But it's just that the polarized opinions get far more attraction.
Yeah.
And podcasts like this, it's just, the hope of us that we reach at least a small subset of the population that listen, and then hopefully think, okay, some good points in there, because the good points take conversation to ease out.
Yeah,
you can get a quote from it to provide a snapshot, but at the end of the day, like, as you know from having consultations with clients, to get into the part where you really start to go, right, okay, that takes conversation.
yeah.
It doesn't take a 1,200 character, 2,200 character IG post or whatever the caption length is these days. So,
Yeah.
Marcus, been great having you on.
Always a pleasure,
Thanks.
dude.
Always a pleasure. Where can people find more about yourself and the work that you do?
You can find me on Instagram at mkain coaching. That's MKAIN coaching, and mkaincoaching.com. Those are the two best places to reach me. If you message me on Instagram, I'm always on Instagram, so that's where to get me.
I live on Instagram. Cool. I'll put that in the notes of the show. Thank you
Awesome.
for the time, mate. It's been great.
Cheers, buddy.